Recreation Commission and the Golf Advisory Committee to order for Monday, June 15th, 2015. And if you'd all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
I'll do Parks and Recreation Commission first. Chair Wiscombe?
Here.
Longstreet?
Here.
Heaton?
Here.
Rinconibara?
Here.
French is not present and Clark is not yet present. Golf Advisory Committee members, Chair Nemeth?
Here.
Craig?
Here.
Ostergren?
Here.
Mason? Here. Henson?
Here. As a marshal, I will recuse myself from the discussion.
And Garcia is not present as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGill. Is anyone here for public comment on the item on the item not on an item not on the agenda? Anyone at all? Okay, so you're all here. You've all filled out slips to speak about the item on the agenda. Okay, so I'm going to close general public comment then, and I will open it up to Ms. Rapp and Mr. Sewell.
Madam Chair and members of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Golf Advisory Committee meeting. So tonight we are here to complete our next step in decisions related to the golf course. So we're going to have a staff presentation. So we'll walk through some materials that were covered in the staff report, and then we'll take questions from the commissioners and the committee members on material information that was provided, and then go to public comment. And I will just say that we have been receiving a lot of emails from people today as public comment. We were able to forward those to members of the two committee and commission, and then as we also made a printed copy, so each member has a packet of emails that we received prior to 4 o'clock. So you do not have anything that we received after 4 o'clock. However, we will be saving all of the comments, and we will be including them when we go to City Council with this item at the end of July. So for those people who forwarded us public comment, you don't need to send something again in July, unless you want to, of course. We will forward what you've already sent. So after public comment, we will have a joint discussion and deliberation amongst the members of this body, and then each chair will solicit a recommendation or motion from their committee members, and each body will vote on whatever that motion is. So it's two separate motions at the end of the night. And you are making a recommendation to City Council. And as I said, tentatively, we are scheduled to go to City Council on July 28th. So that's kind of the plan right now. So just a quick overview. I think most people are familiar with our situation. The golf course revenue has not been keeping pace with our costs. Our reserves have been below policy since 2008, and we may deplete them within the next 1 to 2 years. We identified a number of options to improve our fiscal sustainability, because a priority for us is to maintain the city's municipal golf course. Council direction was that the golf course would remain self-sustaining and not have to rely on general fund support. And part of the direction from council was to contract out golf course maintenance. And there were a number of other measures that council put in place as well, but pertinent to this discussion is the decision to contract out maintenance. The existing concession agreements, one with the Pro Shop and one with Mulligan's Restaurant, both of those concession agreements terminate June 30th of 2016. It provides an opportunity for the city to look at changing the model by which the golf course is operated. Doesn't mean we have to, but it provides the opportunity. 3 operating models are being considered, and again, your recommendation will go to City Council. So just to kind of revisit how we got here, we've had a number of meetings. This has been a regular topic. The golf course financial situation has been a regular topic at the Golf Advisory Committee meetings on a monthly basis for the last few years. We have also talked about the golf course during budget presentations over a number of years to the Parks and Recreation Commission, the City Council Finance Committee, and the City Council. On November 7th and November 18th of 2014, we went forward to the Finance Committee with some numbers and our projections, and clearly we were having more of a financial problem that we needed to really take some action. We went to the Park and Recreation Commission in November and then to City Council in December. City Council directed staff to develop more financial information and information on several operational areas, and to take that information to the Finance Committee, who would then develop a recommendation for City Council. We took the Finance Committee recommendation to City Council, and on March 10th, the City Council gave staff direction to proceed with contract maintenance instead of city employee maintenance, to include in the golf budget a refinancing of golf debt, which reduced the annual debt commitment, and to increase marketing to better promote the golf course. So those 3 things. In April, we took that to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Parks and Recreation Commission created a committee that would include 2 Parks and Recreation Commissioners and 3 Golf Advisory Committee members to meet and develop a recommendation that would go to the Park and Recreation Commission, we'll go to the Golf Advisory Committee, the Park and Recreation Commission, and ultimately to City Council. And that's kind of where we are here tonight, is looking at, of the recommendations, which one should be recommended to City Council as being in the best interest of the golf course and the community. And just a quick recap, I think it's important to look at how the golf course has continued to lose play over the years. We've seen a decline in the industry itself. There's an overexpansion of golf courses across the country, and we have seen that here locally as well. So you have the same number of players or fewer players playing on more courses, which means that the play is spread further. We also have seen, particularly since the recession, that golf courses that were in a higher pricing structure than Muni are now competing with Muni because they are trying to recoup any rounds or play that they have been losing. So we are seeing a lot more competition locally, and that has had an impact on us. So with that, I think the other thing that we like to remind people is everybody's been experiencing this, and Santa Barbara's municipal golf course is still one of the busiest golf courses in the Tri-County area. These are golf courses that I think everybody is pretty familiar with, and we are right up there. So although we've lost play, we are still a very, very busy golf course. So through the meetings which we have been having, there have been a number of priorities that have been identified by people who've participated through public comment, the different members of the different bodies, whether it was the Golf Advisory Committee, the Park and Recreation Commission, the Finance Committee, or City Council. And City Council, especially their direction to us, is that we need to make the golf course fiscally sustainable over the long term. The golf course should remain self-sustaining, should remain a self-sustaining enterprise fund, so not rely on the general fund for support, and with contract maintenance, as we discussed earlier. There was a lot of concern expressed, and City Council concurred that the city, no matter what model is in place, the city has to maintain control over fees, policy, and course maintenance quality. And a priority is an exceptional golfer experience for all operations to retain and attract golfers. So initially, the city contracted with a golf consultant to evaluate the city's operations and to provide information on alternate operating models that the city might consider. So in the first one you'll see, which is our current structure, the city provides course maintenance. Golf operations and food and beverage are provided by separate concessions, and the city manages the golf course. In the hybrid with contract maintenance, which is what we would call option C, which is before you today, is private contract maintenance, and then a private or concession for the pro shop, and a separate concession for food and beverage, and the city would provide the overall management, or if you had, I'm sorry, no, I didn't say that right. So the city would continue to manage. So, and then management agreement is a private company which would oversee all of the 4 operations that are up there: maintenance, pro shop, and management, and or including food and beverage. So that's the management agreement. The last 2, the facility lease and the full self-operation, were eliminated by the city. They were not in the city's best interest at this time. So we are down to 3 models which are recommended. Option A is one contract, which is a management agreement for course management, the pro shop, maintenance, and the food and beverage operations. And the food and beverage operations could be a separate contract to the management company. So it could be the current vendor, or it could be an in-house operation for the management company. Option B is 2 contracts a management agreement for course management, the pro shop, and maintenance operations with a separate agreement for food and beverage, similar to what the city has now with Mulligan's. And then option C, which is 3 contracts, where the city would continue to manage the course. We would have a maintenance contract, and 2 separate concessions, one for pro shop and one for food and beverage concession. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Sewell, who is the department's business analyst.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp. So it's Mark Sewell, Business Analyst, Parks and Recreation. So I'll try to explain to you a little more about what a management agreement really is. So typically the management agreement, as Ms. Rapp has said, would involve one company coming in and running all of the operations for the golf course. And that length of term would likely be between 3 to 5 years. And that represents the fact that there's normally with a management contract little need for any real huge capital investment up front. And to just repeat what was said earlier, there are examples out there in the real world where a management company will come in and run all of the operations, but then, under the discretion of the city, actually contract out themselves the food and beverage operation. Typically, a management contract or management agreement would be fiscally structured with a fixed fee to the management company, which would mean that the city or the community would be carrying the financial risk for the operations for golf, pro shop, and the restaurant. And by financial risk, what I mean is if play goes up, the city benefits because we'd see more revenue coming in. And if play goes down, the city would lose out because you wouldn't be seeing the revenue coming in. So it's really just a fixed fee for coming in and overseeing all of the operations. A lot of the contracts do tend to then have some form of financial incentive based upon exceptional performance and growing revenues against last year, for example. So that's where they serve as the city's agent. And as I said, it can be either 2 or 3 operations which are covered by the management agreement. And then in option A, as discussed before, it would be a subcontract with a food and beverage provider. Where the city is able to then maintain control over policy and fees and capital is that on an annual basis and then more frequently in terms of reviewing and making sure everything is going on track, city staff would be meeting with the management company and discussing the strategic plan for the golf course from a point of maintenance, marketing, customer service, capital, and then set in the same way that we do at the moment internally a budget that we would take before council, but prior to taking it to council, it would go via the GAC and the Parks and Recreation Commission. So the oversight would not change under this model. The way in which it would work, therefore, would be a management company would typically send 2 bills a month to the city, one for the fixed fee, and then the other one would be for a statement of all of the costs involved to running the golf course, the pro shop, and the food and beverage. And then there'd be, as I say, regular performance reviews and meetings. There are many, many different ways of structuring the contract in terms of the nuances, which would come out as part of the RFP process if that option were to be delivered. And that would really be about the risk profile the city would like to take on in terms of the food and beverage or pro shop operations. Currently, we are particularly risk adverse. We prefer to have a guarantee of percentage of revenue, and therefore we'd be looking to structure those deals to the advantage of the city from a risk profile, should that be the decision that council give us. So here's an overview of some of the key responsibilities for the different things you need to run a golf course, a restaurant, and a pro shop. And I pulled out some of the key items there. So you can see the first line shows the city management and oversight. Now, in that 1.6 FTE, that's currently the management that the city expects would be required under the existing relationships in fiscal year 17. It's made up of 3 particular job roles. You have an element of the Parks and Recreation Director, you have the business manager, and you also have the superintendent.
Mark, would you just explain, just tell people what FTE stands for? Full-time equivalent, yeah.
Joe Wiscombe, I will be delighted. Full-time equivalent, so that would mean how many full-time people working 40 hours a week would be employed directly at the golf course. And in this context, it's how many of those people would be employed to oversee the running of the contract from a fiscal and commercial standpoint to contract management and also with regards to the maintenance oversight.
Can I interrupt? I need to interrupt because I made a last-minute change to the PowerPoint, and it is not correct, and the way that Mark had it correct before was correct. So on the PowerPoint where you see status quo and it says 1.6 FTE, the 1 should not be there. It's 0.6 FTE because the one full-time position is the golf course superintendent. And the reason that that's important to have that correct is that when you get to option C, the maintenance superintendent is not included in that, correct? I want to make sure I'm getting this correct.
Within the 1.0 in option C, there is an element of oversight to make sure that the maintenance standards that would have been created are being adhered to, but it wouldn't be a full-time superintendent.
So then this is correct, 1.6, and then it would go down to 1.0 with contract.
They are comparable on that basis.
Okay.
Just they're accounted for slightly differently because the superintendent is currently a direct person who works there full-time, and the other 0.6 are management within a different area of the department. But
okay, so
these numbers are okay.
It's good the way it is. I just wanted to make sure because we were struggling with that at the last minute, and it's important because we're talking about the impact to the golf course and the budget.
And I'll just expand that a little more. Why do we really care about how many city employees are oversighting? Well, it costs money. The way that the accounting works in the city is that people are allocated to different funds and their pay and benefits are therefore charged to those funds. And we recognise in our expectations in working with the consultant who's worked with this in many, many communities and with discussions with other communities where these models exist, that the amount of time devoted to the management of these contracts differs depending on the structure of the contract. So you can see in each of those examples what we were expecting is that the costs associated to city management and oversight would be lower than it currently is. Okay? And then the next two lines on there are pretty self-explanatory, and that really just goes to show that in any of the scenarios before you, the city will retain the control over fees, policy, maintenance standards, and the capital decisions going forward, in consultation with whomever is running the golf course, of course. Some further areas for consideration is the golf marketing. Currently, the bulk of the golf marketing lies with the city, has the largest budget of all of the parties with regards to that. Under options A and B, it would be expected that the management company would generally have the oversight for marketing. Management companies tend to have a number of golf courses in their portfolios and have tried and tested campaigns and ways of working in scale that can work there. And then in option C, it would be expected that the city would again retain the fiscal responsibility and also the oversight from a staffing standpoint. The general management follows the same kind of pattern for the similar reasons. Junior programs is something we're very passionate about. Currently, that's performed excellently by the current concession, and we're seeing a lot of growth there. But again, we would expect the management company would bring that into their purview. They have experience doing it elsewhere. Option C, again, we would see no reason why that wouldn't fall under the Pro Shop concession. And then computer hardware and other things that kind of you need to run businesses. Currently, the city provide all of those, and we also then support them with the city department. And again, we would expect the management company to have the infrastructure sufficient to be able to run and manage all of the operations needed. And then in option C, again, we would be looking to try and make it best fit in 2015 in terms of who has responsibility for what equipment. Then it leads on to some examples in terms of the real world. What do the golfers really see, and how do they then put some context into where these operations are currently in operation? And as you can see, we have a number of examples here in option A, and that's because that's the most common and most popular option for operating a golf course in the local area. And without listing off all of the golf courses, I'm sure those of you who do play golf recognise most, if not all, of those golf courses. And so you can see each of the options before you are in place in golf courses. There is a precedent there. There are things that we can learn from those communities, so we wouldn't be doing any of these things for the first time. A further overview in terms of understanding some of the differences and trying to compare and contrast them. So option A, again, to remind everyone, is one contract where one company would come in and run the whole lot. with the ability, should the city wish to contract with them in such a way that they could subcontract with a restaurant. Option B just formalises that agreement and therefore means there would be a management agreement, but the city would also have a contract with a separate food and beverage company. And option C is where the city would have 3 contracts with 3 separate vendors and would retain the day-to-day management of the golf course. And so you can see that the high city control over fees policy and product quality is the same for any of these options before us. Option A then does lend the lowest oversight costs, and you will see that in terms of the staffing requirements. It's one of the drivers for that. Option B increases slightly the need for further oversight in the city because you now have 2 contracts to manage. Excuse me. And option C would actually increase the oversight costs because instead of having the current 2 contracts, there would be 3 contracts. Option A offers the highest synergy for decision making. Synergy is quite a sexy word. What does it mean? Synergy means that together things are greater than the sum of their 2 parts. And the intent of using this word here is that there's a belief and there's actually some evidence to suggest that when you contract with one company, they're able to look at the picture as a whole and determine where their loss leaders will be for promotional purposes, be able to make decisions faster. The negotiation in terms of creating new programs, offering new prices, etc., can be often smoother and faster, so you can react quickly to changing market dynamics. And that's what we mean by the term synergy in here. Option B would be an increased synergy from where we currently are, with one company in this scenario overseeing the maintenance and the pro shop operations. Therefore, they could take decisions in the light of both of those operations without having to necessarily argue and discuss and pull out contracts and work out if it works for them both. And option C, we feel, increases the potential for conflict because you have 3 parties and the city now trying to take decisions for the best interest of the golf course as a whole. Option A and B, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the risk and the financial risk, doesn't mean it's a bad thing, can be a good thing. But the maintenance costs are more variable under that model because the city just pays the bill. The costs of running the golf course just flow through the management company straight into the books of the city. There are some advantages to that because the larger the management companies, the more economy of scale they may have, and therefore the better purchase price and some maybe access to some improved ways of working can be attained and then benefit the golf course. However, like I say, the intent is that the dollars that they spend on the golf course are reimbursed by the city. And then in option C, with a maintenance contract, what you see out there is that maintenance contracts tend to be more fixed. Things like water wouldn't be fixed because that would be an extremely difficult thing to try and get someone to say how much exactly they're going to spend, particularly when we don't know how much it's going to rain. But things like labour and fertilisers and those other sort of generally used materials would tend to be priced at the start of the contract based on contract terms and maintenance standards. Therefore, the city would know how much exactly it's going to pay for those things, irrespective of demand. And of course, if actually in actual fact there's a need to do more on the golf course, the city wins on that regard. And if they do less, then the city doesn't. Option A and B seems to be a more competitive marketplace for management companies to come and look at golf courses and want to take on more than one of the operating elements of that golf course. And so therefore that drives competition, and competition can tend to be a good thing for a buyer. They also have a lot of experience in working in multiple golf courses that would hopefully be a good thing to be able to draw on in the running of a new golf course. Option C limits the number of qualified vendors that would be available to run each of those different contract facets, and that's seen in the number of companies actually providing services that would be specific enough to work at a golf course. Option A and B being management contracts, I briefly touched on this earlier, they do offer financial incentives, and the more options that the more operational areas of the golf course under one contract, the more that those incentives can be congruent with the bigger picture of the golf course. As you move towards option B and option C, you start to have concessionaires who are financially motivated primarily by the concession that they are running. And so you need to be very careful to make sure that decisions are taken for the best for everyone, and the golfer and the city, when there might be other things that a restaurateur or a pro shop or a maintenance contractor may like to do differently. When we get to the numbers and the financial projections, we rebased our projections on fiscal year 2017. That is because that is the first fiscal year that the new operating models would need to start with the contracts that we currently have ending at the end of fiscal year 2016, which is June 2016. So applying the expected revenues and costs for each of these different models with the help of the pro forma advisors, golf course consultants, we have updated our financial projections, and each of the models represents a significant financial saving to the golf fund. Option A and B have been set to be the same financial benefit at $368,000, with option C offering $318,000. And while we have not factored into the hard numbers some of the qualitative differences that we've discussed, the bottom of this table here speaks to the fact that, in the opinion of the consultant that we work with, in the years of experience that he has and seeing these models in operation, option A has had the strongest potential for increased financial performance, while option B has a stronger potential for increased financial performance. Now, that's slightly nuanced, but it's extremely difficult in reality to put dollars on that, other than to say that is the professional opinion. And option C gives us no real change, no real further upside in terms of increased performance from the numbers that we present before you. Back to Ms. Rapp.
So with that, just to revisit, I've already talked about the committee being formed by the Parks and Recreation Commission and the composition of the meeting. The committee met twice on May 22nd and June 3rd, and ultimately was a unanimous vote to recommend option A. So this body here tonight, two bodies, has the opportunity to hear from those committee members and to make a recommendation separate to the commission. And we thought that we would share some of the themes of the decision-making by the committee. Option C was said to be less fiscally attractive. It increases city admin costs and has the least synergy between operations. Options A and B improve the synergy, equals a longer-term financial benefit for the golf course, reduces city admin, and is a more common model. And option A provides the highest synergy with the strongest potential for increased financial performance. So they also talked about the need for the golf course to market effectively, and that a synergistic relationship between the operations was critical for that to happen. That there's a need for improved coordination of golfer services. For instance, with tournaments and home clubs, often there have been challenges in trying to get those services coordinated between the different operations out at the golf course. A lot of discussion about customer service related to the pro shop and restaurant operations. And I think in particular, I would say this group was more focused on to the golf course, the golfers. And it is in the best interests of the golf course and the golfers that the best interests of the golf course and the golfers should be the highest priority in looking at this and making a decision going forward. So we are before you for recommendations of option A, B, or C. Staff is happy to answer any questions. I will say we know that this is a difficult decision all the way around. The fact that we have a full chamber here tonight with people who care strongly about Mulligan's, the pro shop, the golf course, it's good. This should be a big public discussion, and we're glad to have people here. And it is a reflection of just how difficult it is. And so I think what staff would ask is that whatever decision we have, that we're looking at the best interest for the golf course over the long term. And so that's really what we're looking for. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have before you go to public comment.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Rapp, and thank you, Mr. Sewell, for your presentations. It was excellent. It's a good overview. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the committee and the commission for any questions. We're not going to have any discussion yet. And then we will, at the end of the question period, we'll open it up for public comment. And anyone who came in late that wishes to speak, you need to fill out one of the speaker slips in the back, please, if you wanted to speak on this matter. After we have public comment, it will be back to the commission and the committee for discussion and recommendations. So we'll start. Anyone have questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Craig.
Yes, one of the last points you brought up was the increased performance. Do we need increased performance? If, in fact, the numbers say that the option C would guarantee $318,000, that seems to me that would take care of the problem in itself so that we could do away with the other options and kind of do it the same way we've been doing it.
Mr. and Madam Chair, I don't know how we would do that. Committee Member Craig, I would answer that by saying if we look at the challenges that the golf course has had over the last 10, 15 years and our challenges to have stabilized play for the golf course and knowing that the competition is still there, we don't know what's ahead. So a savings to the golf budget of $300,000 allows us to slowly bring our reserves back up to policy level, so we have quite a way to go. We also have a lot of capital that is postponed that we need to do. And so I think it is a short term, but the concern is what happens in the longer term. And we did a 5-year projection for City Council looking out ahead. I'm sorry we don't have that with us. I didn't think to bring that. But I think that's the concern, looking at what happens in 17 versus what happens in 20 or 21.
Also, I've been concerned, I think the main concern of the people that are here is that the guarantees for the people that we have that are doing the great job for us over the past 10 years, when the play was slow, they put in an awful lot of effort to increase play, and now it seems to me that with options A and B, they have a distinct possibility of being thrown under the bus. And that's what I'm hearing. And if there's some way that you could guarantee me that with the recommendations of option A and B that they wouldn't be thrown under the bus, then I'd feel a lot better. Because if in my participation with the options committee, if I was just to be a bean counter, then I could understand that. That would be a real easy decision to make. But since I'm not a bean counter and I care about some of these people, that's my question.
So if I rephrase your question, it would be, what happens to the people who work in the restaurant and the pro shop with options A and B?
Yes, what kind of guarantees can there be made, or is that a possibility in the many different ways that you can structure the contracts that you're going to submit to these people?
So let me take it by operation. So with speaking specifically to the restaurant Mulligan's, as with the Medinas being the operators, could end up being the operator of the restaurant in options A, B, or C. There is no guarantee for A. In B, the city could choose to continue their relationship with Mulligan's and begin to negotiate a new contract. And actually, the same would happen with C, because their contracts are at end. So Mulligan's has been a good partner and a good producer for the city. And so they have that option. I can't make guarantees. I am not city council. So that's ultimately where the decision lies. With the pro shop, the operation itself, it would just be option C. However, we have, in working with the golf consultant, he has told us that in these times of transition, when new operators come in, they are very interested in the staff who are currently working the golf course and looking to have consistency, and many are offered opportunities to work with them. So that's what we've been told related to the maintenance and the pro shop. We haven't talked about the restaurant specifically, but I would assume that that would be the same. So does that help? I can't really give you
that
a
helps.
promise.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Longstreet?
And as you've talked about this contract process, I mean, in the way the city operates, isn't it have to go out to an RFP no matter what for next year? Because it seems to me as public property, it should have fair and other, equal opportunity for all to bid on a contract.
Their contracts are at an end, so that is the typical process for the city, is when the contract is at end, that it go out for RFP. However, and I would say probably particularly to restaurants. So I know that the waterfront department, when they've had a lease with a restaurant and it's been a good provider, good business, good partner with the city, they have gone to city council and gotten permission to just negotiate a new lease. So it is, city council has some discretion where that is.
And in that process, then new terms would be set, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions before we open it up for public comment? Mr. Heaton?
Thank you. I have a few questions, and I apologize if they jump around, but I put them together, and I thought this was a pretty thorough report, and going through it and just trying to make sense of it all. But first, I'll start with a more general question. I think you answered already one of them, but just option C is presented as less appealing to vendors. Was there any outreach in that determination to current management companies to find out if they would just be much less interested in a package deal that didn't include restaurant, or not interested at all? Or is this based on analysis of other operations?
Are you speaking specifically of option C or A, B, and C? Could you just be a little more specific? Because I think they're very different.
I was speaking in option.
In option
C,
C, let me just option C very specifically. I'll respond, and then Mark Sewell has had more discussion recently with our consultant about that. But with option C, there are very few contractors of golf course maintenance. So you would have a limited number of vendors who would respond to an RFP for golf course maintenance. There are a lot of people out there that would do grounds maintenance, but we would write it very specifically for golf course maintenance. Restaurant, no problem. Lots of people who would respond to an RFP for a restaurant operation. And then with the pro shop, I would say it would be fairly limited. That is what we experienced the last time we went out when Richard Chavez retired, and we went out with an RFP. We had a limited response. So I would expect that we would have that again. With option B, and I would say with option A and B, what we've been told from our golf consultant is that there probably would be a pretty good interest from people who would be interested in submitting a proposal, whether or not it had the restaurant as part of it. It's obviously better from a management perspective to have the restaurant under that contract as well. But in terms of the number of people who would respond, I think we would still see that. Mr. Sewell, is there anything you would add?
Yes, the only thing I would add really to that is that we are in a privileged position in that our golf course is a gem, and everyone in this room realizes that. And it would be sought after by a number of management companies to take within their portfolio. And the restaurant is of significant size and quality and derives a great deal of its revenue and its custom from non-golfers. That to some management companies, they may be more used to running the hot dog shack at the turn rather than the full service destination restaurant. So therefore, their model has been predicated on mainly focusing on maintenance and golf operations. So they will be interested if option B was to be taken. And there are, again, a number of other examples out there where management companies run reasonably sized restaurants with banqueting facilities and things like that. There are enough golf courses with restaurants that have taken this decision in previous years. That means there's a vibrant market out there for management companies to take either option A or B and come back with a compelling proposal, is the advice we've had from our golf course consultant.
I think the other thing, just to add from conversations with the golf course consultant related to a separate restaurant concession, is that the consultant noted that Mulligan's has been a very solid performer. And so that goes into the mix and has been providing a good revenue stream to the city. So,
thank you. And I do believe there was a note in there about the pro shop also being a fairly strong performer. Is that relative to other pro shops? Is that correct? Am I in that study? That wasn't part of my notes, but
I'd have to look and see what you were referring to specifically.
okay. I'm just going to plow through a few questions if possible. And then,
We have other
Okay.
people that want to ask questions. I'm not rushing you, but Mr. Craig, we're not going to go back to you before we finish everyone else. Thanks.
okay. So the just a management fees question or two. The pro forma study indicated that the fees are in addition to salaries and expenses. So I'm curious as to how that works. How is that determined? What salaries are paid and expenses are paid specifically?
Yeah, Wiscombe Chair Namnath and Commissioner Heaton. That's a mouthful. The calculations for the costs of each of these different options has been, sorry, I'm trying to, so I can see you, has been put together with the experience of putting many of these contracts and things together previously with regards to the consultant that we work with, and also by looking at our existing operation. So where we know that the operation is going to be the same in terms of the maintenance, things like that, we've said, well, that's going to be the cost of the maintenance. There's no need to change that. And then we've looked at the number of people required to run the different operations at the golf course, and then applied a wage that is deemed to be the market rate. And where appropriate, we've used the living wage where it applies to the maintenance staff. And so that's the basis of the calculations. And for each of these examples, for instance, the maintenance costs is the same. It's deemed to be the same. And the management fee itself changes slightly depending on the scale of the operation that the management company would be running. So the highest the management fee would be in option A if they were going to be running all three of the key operations at the golf course. And then if of course if option B were taken, then the management fee would be slightly lower because they'd have less under their purview.
Thank you. And that kind of segues into my next question on the management fee. What is the equivalent to current services that are provided? What is the management fee covering that is now covered under city responsibility?
Okay. So the management fee is the costs. It's the payment for services ultimately, which then goes to pay for all of the head office costs, all of the back office and the infrastructure costs for the management company, and of course an element of profit for them. And it replaces in the main some of the city oversight costs. We'd be transferring some of the, and you may recall from the previous slide on the full-time equivalents, where it reduces down significantly from current to option A and B. And so, in essence, you would be transferring, instead of city employees having to take on a number of those actions, that would be part of what the management company would be doing. So, on a like-for-like basis, there probably isn't a huge fiscal saving to be had with transferring that to the management fee. But, of course, where you then see the savings is in the operational execution and in the differences in the labour costs for the maintenance.
I think the other thing is that there is a reduction in what the cost for the city to operate the course. So our allocated costs that we get from city administration and some of those elements of our budget that are not negotiable, we don't have any control over. So what we would call our city overhead, some of that goes away because those services get shifted over to the management agreement. And that's where some of the budget savings comes in.
And those are a fixed fee. And the next part of the question, there was discussion in there about the finance in the pro forma study about the financing history, particularly like, for example, bonds, having potential effects on the attractiveness of those options and what fees, they would translate maybe into higher fees depending on what was limitations associated with those previous investments. You following what I'm saying? And I'm wondering what we have here, they didn't actually go into what those limitations or effects on the fees may be.
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but it sounds like maybe comparing more of a lease, because those sound like issues related to leases and not necessarily to management agreements.
My understanding from the study was they were more related to the performance bonuses that would come on top of fees. So there would be a fixed fee and then a percentage. Am I getting that wrong? Is that not?
The typical contract would be a fixed fee, excuse me, with performance incentives. So you would have a performance incentive.
So there's no limitations on what kinds of incentives could be offered because of the bonding history or the previous finance history?
I don't believe.
Yeah, and in terms of the work conducted currently with the consultant, there's nothing that's been brought to our attention or anything in the structure of the finances for the Golf Fund which make us believe that there'd be any challenges or issues with contracting with a company on the basis of paying them a fixed fee and then paying them an incentive. The incentive tends to be controlled so that they can't just run away and make millions and millions. It tends to be based on a percentage of the fixed fee. So it'd be a 20 or 30%. And as I say, in the discussions thus far, the contracts as we would be looking to put forward as part of A, B, and C seem perfectly fine.
But we could offer those full, typical incentives and,
Yes.
and not be driven toward a higher fee.
I think what you're referring to is how a lot of communities actually used bonds to build their golf courses, which we don't fall into that, or they use certain kinds of tax dollars to, front the money, and we didn't do that. So I don't think that would apply to our
That
golf
is the
course.
answer, yeah.
Okay.
That I was looking for. Thanks. My last, I think, final set of questions here is related to the attachment 2 that was provided, and just trying to get an understanding of that. There wasn't as much sort of a discussion and logic train provided into how we get to this this table from the actual study that was the bulk of the attachment. And I can go specifically, but for example, the financial benefit summary on in this and carried into the staff report on page 3 is very different from the conclusions in the pro forma study.
Yeah. Yes, I can speak to that. So, Chairwoman Chair Namath and Commissioner Heaton, the study was created last calendar year off the basis of our most recent finished fiscal year, which was fiscal year 14. And that was the basis of the numbers that were prepared for that document. And so in updating the numbers for going forward, we took the decision to rebase them to what we had previously recommended to Council for our FY17 budget, because we'd now done that work and completed all of that effort and had the assumptions from finance and all of those things that we didn't have at the time of the original study. FY17 being important because that would be the year that this would then actually start to take effect. And so there are a couple of reasons as to why the numbers have changed significantly. Of course, assumptions can always change depending on the time that's gone by between. And the main ones is that there's further growth in the payroll costs from city pay and benefits in fiscal year 17 versus where they were in fiscal year 14, which grows the savings from comparing the status quo against the projections going forward. And to the point that Ms. Rapp said around the allocated costs, because we've just been through a full budgeting cycle for 2 fiscal years, we have much more information to hand to be able to make assumptions and assessments as to which elements of those allocated costs would apply. And so that's why you see some of the differences between the study numbers and what we're now showing you is the most up-to-date numbers.
Okay, I did figure there was some background updates there. It sort of flipped the conclusion and the financial outlook in the new scenario from when we were looking at the numbers provided in the study itself, whereas A and B or C was the most financially beneficial way to go. And that, does not get that, or?
Yeah, A, B, and C, as we are referencing it today, were not referenced as A, B, and C in the Krikorian report.
Sure, A and B were the same, really, and the report didn't differentiate between the two.
Right.
Whereas C was distinguished.
If I may.
C is referenced as the hybrid.
Yep.
The modified hybrid.
So, right,
So, just the numbers in the Krikorian report were using the fiscal year 14. And then these are 17, but the premise for all of those should be the same. It should just be that the numbers changed based on how the budget had changed.
Yes, and actually I'm just looking at the page that you're referring to, which compares them, which is page 84 of the Krikorian report, whereby it shows the hybrid model contract maintenance with a living wage would be a variance of $197,400 improvement, and then the management agreement is a $202,600 improvement. So although the difference is smaller, in the Krikorian report, the management agreement was fiscally the more attractive proposition. And within the Krikorian report, there was also example if we weren't to apply the living wage, which was the $424,000 number, which was taken off of the table because the living wage does apply to this contract.
I was going to clarify. So the living wage is included in this.
Living wage is included in all of the
analysis.
updated numbers where appropriate.
And the numbers I was looking at were the net operating income numbers minus debt and comparing it that way. But I understand that we're updating and projecting here. In the debt service, also in the attachment 2, is shown as 85,000 rather than the 264,000. Is that updated, reflective of where it will be in 17?
Yes, we refinance the debt under the instruction of the council,
Right.
and that's the benefit. It's about $180,000 reduction in the annual debt costs for the first few years. But of course, it extends the debt now over a larger number of years.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the
Okay.
time.
Chair Namnath, you had a question.
I do. Ms. Rapp?
If you could
Mr.
just
Sewell?
give us a moment, I'm going to have Mr. Sewell shift positions so that people can see him as they're asking and getting answers to their questions.
In regards to the management contract, the series of emails that we've received about this subject has brought up a couple of questions and maybe some misconceptions about the management contract. In particular, would it be financially beneficial for the management contractor to cut corners or lower labor or in any way diminish the quality of the golf course to supplement their income?
Chair Namnath, their income is primarily fixed. So in the scenario that you were describing, let's assume that they want to cut corners and save money. Well, they're saving the city money in that regard, because the costs pass straight through to the city in a typical management agreement. In option C, if the same practice was to take place and people wanted to cut costs, then the city wouldn't see any of those savings. And it would behoove the management and the oversight and the control elements of the city to pull in the contractor and say, you're not doing what we requested of you in the contract, and hope that at the point of doing the contract, the standards were clear and concise and actionable. Bringing it back to the management agreement, of course, if they start to cut corners and make the course go downhill, they are very unlikely to have their contract extended, and they're very unlikely to earn their incentive for performance. But there is no gain to a management contract for deciding not to spend money, because that ultimately comes through straight to the city's bottom line.
One more question. There's a $50,000 delta between A and B and C. What accounts for that $50,000? And we're talking about a 5-year contract here, so roughly $300,000 on the table between those two. Could you explain the $50,000 difference?
Chairman Namnath, I can do that. In the main, that's the difference between the oversight from a city standpoint. And that's reflective of the full-time equivalence for growing from, I think it was about 0.7 to 1 full-time. So that 0.3 of a person, when you add up all the pay and benefits for that management position, makes that sort of difference.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Rincon, you had a question.
I just wanted to clear up. So between options A and options B, you have highest synergy for option A, and option B, you have continued potential conflicts for golf events. So I was sitting in on the options committee, so I'm aware of that, but I just want my colleagues here to get an understanding of that, because that's a key difference between the two options.
Chair Wiscombe, Chair Namnath, and Commissioner Rincon-Ibarra. I'm glad I put my teeth in today. I guess really the reason why option B is considered to have a slightly more challenge is that you now have two contracts, and the common party to those two contracts is the city, and so therefore the city has to try to find ways to structure deals or oversee deals which work best for the city. And oftentimes it can be a challenge, because if one of the parties feels that they're already committing to a number of things where they're feeling they're contributing more than the other party, it can tend to lead to an element of resentment or slow down the process and just take more time and effort. It's not that you can't do it. It's not that you can't achieve good things. There are many examples which we have done some very good things at the golf course, and there are many examples where option C works and flourishes. It's just a reflection of the time and the effort being increased as compared to negotiating with one party who has oversight over all operations and who can decide to do something whereby, I know I'm going to take a loss on the carts on this particular deal because I know it benefits this other area where I get to make the money. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
I think the thing that I would add to that, because I could understand a lot of people saying, well, why do you have to change anything from what we have now? The golf course today is in a totally different competitive environment than it was 7 or 10 years ago, especially since the recession. We have not seen play come back at our golf course to pre-recession levels. And we fight for every golfer to stay and play. The competition is fierce. All the time we get emails from golfers who ask us to match what Glen Annie is doing and all of that. So that's the competitive market that we are in that we were not in before. And we've been in a lot of very difficult meetings where you have the city as the manager of the golf course trying to negotiate, as Mr. Sewell was saying. We're in this competitive environment. We need to be as dynamic as possible. So initially it was very difficult because the city doesn't do dynamic. We do ritual and structure and how things go. And that's very frustrating for the other two partners, being the restaurant and the pro shop, because they're used to running private businesses where they make their decisions and they go forward. On the other hand, as Mr. Sewell mentioned, the city is trying to bring the parties to the table to have one good outcome for the golf course. And you've got those entities, the restaurant and the pro shop in particular, who are looking out for their bottom line. And so while we have had good relationships and good partnerships, and we've done those things, it means we are not as dynamic. We can't be as competitive when we really should be. And that's the biggest difference when you look at A, B, and C. When we talk about synergy, when you're trying to run a business in a competitive environment, you have a strike against you when you're a government entity, because we don't operate that way. And so we have to try to operate that way, and we've gotten better about looking to see where we can, reduce the red tape to get good decisions, but we still have those challenges. So that's the biggest difference. Is we're in this competitive environment, it's only going to get worse, and how do we position the golf course to be in the strongest position going forward?
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one question. So, and this is about the RFP process. So let's say we go with A, and RFP goes out. Will the RFP come back with the management company presenting who they're going to have as a restaurant so that they could make their presentation stronger by, in fact, including mulligans, let's say, or so we would know that going into the RFP process or the decision making?
Joint chairs, Commissioner Longstreet. We can certainly, if asked about the performance of the current concessionaire, offer a favourable opinion as to their financial performance and their relationship with the city. And if a management company decided to use that information, then that would be something that we would consider as part of that application. What we can't necessarily say or promise is if you include mulligans, you get the deal. But of course, I don't believe that was the tone of the question, but a management company, if they're good and they're sensible and they're looking at the operation at Santa Barbara, they'll take full stock of what's currently happening and put a proposal in which reflects that.
Mason, you had a question?
Nancy, I don't see the problem with Mulligan's having a concern about their bottom line and really striving to do well, since that's competition. And they, to my mind, have made the golf course competitive, attractive to a lot of people. So is there any way of A, B, or C where we can demand that they use Mulligan's as the food concession?
So ultimately it's up to City Council. If the city desired to just do a straight contract negotiation with Mulligan's, then you're most likely looking at B or C. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We'll have an opportunity to ask more questions if they come up as we go on. Thank you all for that, and I'm going to open it up for public comment. You just step up to the podium here and pull the mic down close to you. I'm going to hold it strictly to 2 minutes per, unless you've had time yielded to you by someone else, and I know one person has. So as I call your name, if you come up, please, and if you're over your time limit, I will try to politely ask you to wrap up. So our first speaker is Bryant Henson, and it'll be followed by Mario Medina, and he has several people with him. So, yes, welcome, Mr. Henson.
Good evening, co-chairs, commissioners, members. I'm Bryant Henson. I'm a marshal of nearly 10 years. And I feel pride as a representative of Muni and essentially of Santa Barbara. And I was disappointed during the completion of the Creeks project, and I am similarly disappointed with this process. It is obvious that the direction you're heading in was predetermined, and no amount of reasoning will change your goal, and that is unfortunate. The cliche of be careful what you ask for applies here. This process is playing out just like the Creeks project, where decisions were made without the best interest of the golf course at heart. During the Creeks fiasco, the city squandered the opportunity to complete drainage projects as recommended by the master plan. That project would have been so much more, could have been so much more for the course, for the golfers, and even for the children at Adams School. Instead, the golf course has been strapped with a greater maintenance burden and a reduction of playable areas on 3 holes. The result of those uninsightful decisions was a loss of play. So then, like now, you are not listening to the community that you're impacting. Now, like then, I fear your decisions will negatively impact play. The city could invest in its commodity and create a destination resort as Muni showcases Santa Barbara's natural beauty. Or the city can just dump it off to someone else and keep it mediocre. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Okay. I'm going to... Sorry. Get the timer up here. Okay. Mr. Medina and is Jeff... Yeah, you're here. Okay, so that's 2 minutes. And Dana Busey, are you here? Okay, great. So, Mr. Medina, you get a total of 6 minutes.
That sounds to me like a whole day's worth of work. So Mario Medina, I think all of you know who I am, but been around for 23 years at Muni. I purchased Mulligan's 23 years ago through a bankruptcy court. And when I purchased it, it was a gentleman's name was Richard Wilson, and he had it for about a year. And he was doing some work for the airlines, and so he was doing well. Well, the airline cut him off overnight, and all of a sudden he wasn't doing so well. At that time, any business that he did at Tenebrola Golf Club had to be golf related. So 100% of the attention was towards golfers. Okay, perfect. We're in a golf course. Why not? It should be golf related. The golfers that play there should have priority, right? What the problem is that no individual, no company can possibly do business and survive off of just the golfers. I'm a golfer, and I purchase alcoholic drinks, and I eat, and when I play for 4 hours, I spend quite a few dollars. There isn't enough of us golfers to allow a businessman or business family to make a living off of the restaurant. You have to have the non-golfing business. So when I sat down with Richard Johns at the time to assume the lease after I had already purchased the restaurant from a bankruptcy court, I asked Richard Johns at that time, can you please change the condition of my permit? Because I need to be able to do both golfing business and non-golfing business if you want me to stick around for more than a year like everybody else has. And he did. He changed that. And that is what made Mulligan's become what today Mulligan's is. I went from when I got Mulligan's, I was doing $200,000 a year. I'm doing 1.6. Okay. City gets 10%. Okay. That is, if you look back at the last 10 years, 12 years, you can actually go back to the very first year and you'll see that there's never been a decrease in sales. There's always an increase over the year before. Even when the Creeks did what they do to the golf course, we still increased over the previous year. While the golf course had a tremendous, catastrophic decrease in play and revenue. Okay. So are you really willing to take the chance of Mario and family to step aside and possibly bid on the restaurant facility again and maybe get it and maybe not get it? Of course, I'm sure there's many other operators out there that can do a whole lot better than I can. But are we sure that there is one out there? After my entire life devoted to restaurants, I have 5 restaurants in Fresno. I have a restaurant about to be open in about another 4 months down in Goleta. I think most of you already know what that is. Do you think that you're going to get somebody that is going to do what I've been doing, what my family did over the last 23 years to give you what you have at Muni? I find it very hard to believe. And when you're looking at $385,000 increase or savings to solve the problem we have at the golf course right now, does that include Mulligan's being possibly gone and having somebody else that may only be giving the city a revenue of half of what I give you? I'm giving you $160,000 for last year, or I think I'm going to give $160,000 for this year, $150,000 last year. And I always assume that I'm going to increase the following year because I've been doing it every year for 23 years. So is that savings that you're looking for on the $385,000 by going option A, is that going to still be there with possibly now Mulligan's been there and only giving you half of what I'm giving you? Because if you ask any other operator to come in and say you must do 100% golf business and everything else is secondary, they are not going to give you $160,000 worth of revenue. So I ask you guys, and ladies and gentlemen, to really go back to your notebook and go back to when you were having your sessions and rethink is that option A really the choice that you want? Because I have plenty of work to do. I have restaurants all over the place, and I'm a busy guy. I have a bunch of employees. Chris has a bunch of employees, and they are going to be on unemployment until they get interviewed and maybe get back to work. Because yes, whoever runs the restaurant is going to need some employees. Whoever runs the pro shop is going to need some people to work the counter. But until that happens, everybody there is unemployed. And unfortunately, the restaurant in Galita is already going to be opened, so I'm going to have a full staff on. So a lot of my employees, unfortunately, are not going to just automatically go get a job over there.
Could you wrap up?
Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker is Lanny Medina, and followed by Jessica Carsan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laney Medina, and I'm Mario's wife. I'm also co-owner of Mulligan's and also known as Mom. The Medina family has owned Mulligan's for 23 years. We came here in December of 1993 with our 3 young children. We jumped right into the restaurant, which has always been our passion, and ran the restaurant open to close 7 days a week for the first year to ensure that the restaurant would succeed. When I had Jonathan, our youngest, we had a playpen in the club room, and I waited tables with him on my back, or he sat in a high chair watching his dad in the kitchen. Our customers loved him and would take him for walks or play with him. All of our kids have worked here, put themselves through school, and remain here. Even now, their children are here saying hi to customers, passing out menus, and learning valuable life and social skills. We have expanded our family and feel that all of our employees and customers are family, and they feel that way in return. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Jessica Carsan will be followed by Melissa Osuna, I think.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Okay. What we did, just so you know, is that our family's all coming up to speak, and we're all picking different parts of the restaurant that we can focus on and talk about, so we get a lot of our time and we can say each part. So I'm going to focus on our donations and our community presence. You know, we're a very active contributor to the community. We've donated hundreds of school events, community organizations, fundraisers. We've donated and catered the food for the mayor's breakfast last fall. We donated to the Alzheimer's Society, Kellogg School, Dos Pueblos, San Marcos, Toys for Tots, just to name a few. We've never said no when somebody asks for a donation. They come in, we give it to them. Mulligan's sponsors 2 co-ed softball teams in the community each season, is always willing to host events for the community. We also, sorry, I talk really fast. Mulligan's always takes care of its customers and has headed fundraisers for families that have lost loved ones, had medical emergencies, or become disabled. We're an active and integral part of this community, and the whole community will feel the loss if it is decided to be put out to a management company. The bottom line is that this is a small family business that has been hugely successful and has given back to the community. Santa Barbara is a community that supports small businesses, and to make the choice to bring in a large corporation and change the way the golf course is run and the way that our restaurant serves the community would be a huge mistake. It is wrong, and it would be a devastating loss not only to our family and its employees, but to our loyal customers and the community as a whole. You know, I have a little bit more time, so when you talk about synergy between us and the rest of the golf course and everything, and how it's an increased challenge for the city, and that's not something that they couldn't do, but it's going to take more work. That's what our community is for. I don't know why we would choose to take the easy way out, because we don't want to put more work into something that's worked and something that supports our community and is good for us. So, you know, we're not dynamic and competitive. Well, Walmart is, but we don't want Walmart here. You know, we want our local businesses and the people that we can go to and see in a bar downtown and say hi and go to their school graduations and have them have their baby showers and their weddings and their funerals. And that's what we want as a city. So I hope you guys make that choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Melissa Osuna will be followed by Danielle Munoz.
So that's a hard gig to follow. First of all, one of the things through the presentations, it was a lot of mumbo jumbo in my eyes. But the one thing I did get from it was we're Santa Barbara Community Golf Course. And I think the key word there is community. And while the focus, yes, should be on the best interest of our golf course and our golfers, we also need to remember that it's a community golf course. And that goes into me talking about of our customers. At Mulligan's, we have a wide range of customers, from golfers who come in for beers to regulars that come in every single day, to families and the elderly. We here at Mulligan's have become a family throughout the community. We have children's birthday parties there. We host weddings. We have memorial services. I can't tell you how many people have come up to us and say, this is like family. This is where my father wanted his last memorial to be. This is where my daughter dreamed of getting married. There's so many of these great memories. God, we're all getting emotional now. And like my mom said, my son's there 2 days a week, and he's going to grow up in that restaurant. That's my dream, that one day he's going to get the opportunities we all got. His friends are going to get it. Our family is going to grow together. Now that I've come off topic, so here we at Mulligan's, we've become a family with the community. We are intertwined into each other's lives and are so happy about it. Many of our customers are on our first name basis with. We know about their kids and their grandkids, their husbands and their wives. Imagine if we put out a sign at a popular local park saying your families are no longer allowed to play here. They're no longer to come here. That's what you're going to be doing if you contract the community golf course out to a big corporation. It's not going to be the same. You will take a local gem and a family hangout. The last thing we need is this community to lose another place where family and values are key. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you all not to clap after everyone speaks, please. Okay, Danielle Munoz will be followed by Megan Dewey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm the third daughter of Mario and Lainey. I'm also the bookkeeper. I work at Mulligan's. I do the banquet services there. As you all know, Mulligan's is very profitable. It's grown from a small snack shop to a full-service restaurant. We do catering. 23 years ago, when my parents took over Mulligan's, I was only 4. I went there every day with them to work. I used to serve popcorn to the senior golfers, and they'd give me quarters, and I'd save them, and we'd go to the bank once a week. A lot of those golfers still play at Mulligan's, and I see them all the time. Financially, Mulligan's has grown and grown and grown and grown, and I believe it will continue to grow. All of our family and our employees have worked really hard to build Mulligan's up to what it is. We are on call 24 hours a day. We work holidays. We do whatever it takes. We do believe we put our customers first. We always try to make them happy. It's a tough business. It's really tough. Some people come in and take jabs at your family, and you feel like you have to defend them. But we still are professional, and we still do whatever it takes to make them happy. Financially, just to give you an idea, Mario mentioned it, but we have grown over $1 million in the last 20 years in sales. We're scheduled to hit about $1.6 million this year in sales, and again, 10% of that goes to the city. So we're happy to hand over that check every month. We do it on time every month, and in exchange, we get to be at Mulligan's, so we're happy for that. As you all can see, this restaurant is way more than just a business to all of us. It's our family. We've grown up there. We hope that our kids can grow up there, and it can stay a part of the community because there's so many people that really, really love it. So.
Thank you. Okay, Megan Dewey will be followed by Valerie Eckern.
Hello, I'm Megan Dewey. I have been born and raised in Santa Barbara my whole life, and I've been lucky enough to know this family my whole life. I also worked at the restaurant during my grad school, and so I'm very close to the restaurant. And as someone who actually works for the school district here as a speech-language pathologist, I understand budgets and, trying to make sure that we stay in there, but I also know what a great revenue they've brought to our community. and also just that family feel and the community feel, and knowing that it's people from Santa Barbara that are doing this. I go down State Street now and I don't even recognize it from when I was little because of all these bigger businesses and not as much mom and pop shops. And I just really value that. They speak of after funerals and the memorials. Both my grandparents, after they passed away, we went there for my sister's night before a wedding, whatever that's called again, rehearsal dinner. There we go. We went there. It's a place that I really feel that families and communities can go to, that it's not like a normal restaurant that, you know, you can kind of get that little corner room, or it's more of a businessy feel. I mean, there you really do feel welcome, and I feel like if you take that away from our community, it'll be a huge loss, and there's nothing really around here that will fill that. And I love this family and I love this restaurant, and I just hope you guys do the right thing by keeping it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Valerie Eckern, did I pronounce that correctly? Eckern. Okay, and you'll be followed by Elaine Hughes.
Hi, as you know, my name is Valerie Eckern. I started working at Mulligan's about 5 years ago, and about 6 months after that, I got into a really bad accident. I was in the hospital for almost a month. As soon as Mulligan's found out about the accident, they immediately started organizing a fundraiser for me. They contacted other local businesses for donations to raffle off. They sold raffle tickets to the customers and other members of the community. And thanks to the generosity of all these people, they raised $10,000 for me, allowing me to survive in Santa Barbara for the 6 months that I was unable to work due to my injuries. I was rather new to the Mulligan's family when this happened. The people who donated did so because they wanted to help someone who was a part of such a wonderful family. They wanted to help the Mulligan's family. Mulligan's, their customers, and the community all came together to help me because they all care about the people that are Mulligan's. For this, I will forever be grateful, not just for the monetary support I received, but for being part of a community that cares enough to want to help our own. Mulligan's means a lot to me, and it means a lot to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Hughes will be followed by Mike Thompson.
I've been an employee of Mulligan's for more than 20 years, so I'm going to talk about the employees. Mulligan's currently employs 25 people, the majority who have been there for more than 10 years. We stay because our relationship between the owners and our customers are like family to us. Mulligan's puts an emphasis on hiring local teens, friends, and family members in order for them to have a way to enter the job force and learn valuable skills that they can use in future employment. My daughter was one of those people. She started as a bus girl when she was about 14. She was so shy, she was afraid to go ask people if they wanted coffee, but she had to. And she went from there to being a beverage cart person. Then she trained as a full-service waitress, and she was able to put herself through school and graduated from Northridge, and has a wonderful life. And it all started with that. So I will forever be grateful for them for that. And a lot of teenagers come in and they get a start. They have some kind of job skills. Mulligan's takes care of its employees and treats them like family. Most restaurants have a high turnover, and Mulligan's does not. Most restaurants have young people, and they go from job to job. In addition, many of our experienced and loved servers are mature, myself being the most mature, and would have a hard time finding similar positions outside of Mulligan's. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mike Thompson, followed by Cody Free.
My name is Mike Thompson, and I've played golf at Muni since 1965, and I'm here today to support Chris and Mario. They are wonderful people, and their staff are just excellent. One of the things that Ms. Rapp mentioned is that I worked for government for 35 years. I have a graduate degree in finance and management, and I retired with the county as an executive. And one of the things that government does, it's exactly what she was saying, is that we provide the structure, But in terms of the entrepreneurship and taking some risks that need to be taken in terms of getting the boat right side in terms of finances, government kind of drags along a little bit, and I appreciate your honesty in saying that. And one of the things that was the staff report was excellent tonight, but one of the things that struck me was that it really doesn't talk about the people up there. And you know what? The people are the ones that really do the work. I mean, I've developed stuff like was brought up today, and it's hard work. But at the same time, it's like a football play. You can draw it up, but if you don't have the good people to pull it off, the good athletes, nothing's going to happen. And I think with Chris and with Mario, they are just wonderful people, and they're good leaders, and they have good staff working for them. And, I was listening in terms of option B and C. I want the option that allows them either to continue whatever it is that they're doing, or it allows them to apply to be able to continue doing that. And it's really, I've been around a lot of people in my life, and the city of Santa Barbara, it's a wonderful place, and we're lucky that we have these two individuals, in Mario and Chris, to represent us the way they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Cody Free will be followed by Kathy Lear.
Hi, my name's Cody Free, and I am representing the golf community and the women's golf club. And I've been a golfer at Muni since about 2001. And I also worked in the golf shop for 4 years under Richard Chavez. And then when Chris, I got to work for Chris as well. And now I was away for a while, and I've come back, and I'm marshalling at the golf course now on a temporary basis. And I have, mine's also an emotional appeal, because it is, to speak to what Mr. Sewell said, is it is a gem, and the reason it's a gem is because of this community feel. It strikes fear in my heart that we would bring in a big conglomerate, a big management company, and I think it would be a mistake, and I appeal to you as well to keep it as status quo, because that's why we're so unique and so lovely for all these people to come out. And I have a question about, who is this consultant person? Are they part of the big management company? Because that's what it felt like to me. And anyway, I'd like to see it stay the way it is, and there can always be improvement with customer service and all the things you guys recommended to make money. But I'm in agreement with keeping it as it is, and the lovely gem. Oh, and I have been. I've been a supporter of Mulligan's as well. I threw my husband his 50th birthday party there because he was the president of the men's golf club at the time, and that was the place that was the most special that you could ever. It's like we really, it is a family to me too, as a golfer, not just as someone who goes to Mulligan's, but I just played in the McFadden Memorial Golf Tournament this weekend, and I wonder if a big company would support and do things like that are part of who, all the golfers that have played there for years and years. Thanks very much for letting me.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy Lear will be followed by Kevin Zoltan.
Hello. I've been a member of the Santa Barbara Bookkeepers Association for many, many years. And for many years, we had our monthly meetings at Mulligan's. And every month, once a month, and the food was always good. The help was always professional. And hearing about it, I've seen the family grow up. Their daughters would help serve when we had our meetings and stuff. So anyway, I'm just here to support Mulligan's because I feel that they're a good entity and they're very well run.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kevin Zoltan? Is Kevin here? No? Okay. Final speaker, Cynthia Goena?
Madam Chair and Honorable Commissioners and Committee members, my name is Cynthia Goena, and I'm here representing SEIU Local 620 and the members of Local 620 who work for the city. SEIU continues to oppose contracting out of the city employee jobs, but I'm going to speak to what you have before you. SEIU urges you to recommend option C, which provides for a separate maintenance agreement and a separate pro shop and restaurant. The city has experienced history that shows failed landscape contractors, including Valley Crest, and if that contract is not separated out, you then lose your ability to have an exit strategy to go back and clean up the mess and restore what is currently working now. Option C also allows the retention of the existing restaurant and pro shop. The staff report said it offers more fixed costs for maintenance, so there's less risk there. And I find it unlikely that it will cost an additional $50,000, where the report says that one contract and two contracts cost the same amount to administer, but then you add the third contract, there's another $50,000. That just doesn't really make any logical sense. We also wanted to raise that the current city maintenance equipment, we're informed that the city's invested between $300,000 and $500,000 in maintenance equipment in recent years for the airport maintenance operations that are going on out there. And I don't see it in the report, but we're urging that the city maintenance equipment not be sold in the event that you do need to come back in and restore city operation of the maintenance of the course if contract does not work out for whatever reason, or that if the maintenance equipment is sold, that it be sold at market price, not on a sweetheart deal to the new operator, because that would be a gift of public funds, and we believe that's illegal.
Could you wind up, please?
Yes, I would be happy to. We're also asking that the contractor follow the city standards of integrated pest management procedures, no spraying, no gas blowers, and maintain the greens to current standards. We're talking with city staff about maintaining the staff employees either under the private contract or having the option to return to their positions if the contract fails.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes public comment. I'm going to close public comment now, and it's back to the committee and the commission for discussion and action. And I think what I'd like to do, if it's okay with everyone, is just go down the row and perhaps start with Commissioner Rincon. And yes,
if I could.
Yes.
Just before, I think it sounds like a good idea. I want to correct a comment I made earlier, because I was looking at the numbers and it was my mistake, Mr. Sewell, I offer you an apology. The numbers, when I look back at them, I was looking at the adjusted number, and there is no flip. They are consistent, and so sorry about that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Okay. Great. So we'll start with Commissioner Rincon Ibarra, and then move down the row, and let's just hear what you have to say and how you feel.
Well, like I said earlier, I was part of the options committee. We met separately. We went over the report pretty intensively. It was 6 hours worth of meeting, and we delved into the numbers and whatnot. And so I just wanted to kind of say that there was no preconceived notions going into this. I mean, nobody had any agenda going into this. We were just looking at it in terms of meeting some goals, and the goals were making it an exceptional golfing experience. So it's a golf course, granted. So you make it, that's one of your goals, is to make an exceptional golfing experience. In terms of, there was, if this goes out under A or B or C, there's nothing with a contractor, a managing company, that won't engage the services of the current food provider. So I don't see where there's this, imminent threats of like one of our colleagues here said, throwing you under the bus. That's not our point here. Our point here is looking for the best value for the golf course because it is an enterprise fund. It has to be self-sufficient. And so going forward, that is what we have in mind here, is to make it sustainable. Sustainability can be many things, but it's up to being well managed. And so that's the whole point of us meeting here and figuring it out. And so I just wanted to say that, again, there was no preconceived notions going into this. We strictly looked at the numbers. It's wonderful to have a family-owned business, and any general contractor in the right mind would probably engage your services going forward. But, there's no guarantee, obviously. But like I said, any management company who doesn't have a food or beverage service already, under their belt would engage Mulligan to run the restaurant. So given that, again, the whole point of this is to get the best experience for the golfer. And sometimes that means, engaging the services of food and beverage for larger productions rather than your day-to-day stuff. So we can attract even some outside, larger events. And so I just want to get that point across.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ostergren?
Just like what Mark had said, we spent countless hours going over what you've just seen here and trying to make the best decisions for the golf course. And, Mario and Laney I've known for many years being out there. Chris, same thing. It's not about trying to replace them or displace them, as it were. It has more to do with what Nancy's brought up a couple of times, which is the synergy and making sure that everyone is in this for the same reason, and that is to make the golf course profitable and to make it run well, and so that there is good cooperation between all three entities. And that was where option A, I felt, came into play the best, because you've got one person overseeing it, and like we've talked about before, when this goes to City Council, it will be up to them to decide if they want to put a provision in, if we recommend option A, to put a provision in that Mulligan stays and request that, not demand it obviously, but to at least request that. And as far as the pro shop goes, to request that the people that are in it stay also. So it's the only way that I can look at it is that if there's an entity over the top of it, it seems that everybody's in it for the same reason, and that is to become profitable and to give us the most rounds that we can possibly get. And that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Longstreet.
Well, what's really important to me as we go forward is that the city retains control over the policies of the golf course and the fees, because, we have a great turnout tonight, but we're discussing one small aspect of it. And I think if we look ahead and see a golf course where we raise the fees, this room would be more than full. And we're trying to keep this as our personal, Santa Barbara's community golf course, it's affordable. And that means things are going to have to change. I agree with what's been said about the contractors. I also would have to say I believe that when you're dealing with a public entity, contract negotiations for public property need to be open and available to all contractors. That needs to be a fair playing field. So whatever it is a public resource. It's not anybody's private fiefdom. It's not our private fiefdom. So we need to be fair. I was really glad to see that in that we will have living wage, because that was an important thing to me. Also, the IPM is mentioned in our report, and those things will continue. I mean, I remember the days, I've sat in this commission probably close to 20 years, and I remember the days when we said we wouldn't have tournaments because we had so much play. And there were no problems at the golf course. But that's changed, and now we're dealing with the reality of it. And, you know, we'd love to have our employees still manage everything. You know, but I look at it and see, too, we have all these separate contracts right now without much fairness towards the employees. Restaurant employees aren't getting city benefits. You know, we're operating a hybrid right now. So as I look at it, I see that option A has the most benefits, and I believe that we will see in the, you know, it'll come shake out in the RFP process, but it has to be open and fair to all. I would hope that that they would keep the known entities. But, you know, over the next year, what if the Medina family decides that, hey, you know, we're opening the new place and that's where we're going to focus our energy? We as a city don't have any guarantees for that side either. So we have to protect the resources that we have. But I would think that the most benefit to the Golf Course Enterprise Fund and to keeping golf affordable in our community is option A.
Thank you. Ms. Masson?
I read a letter this morning that were coming in. So it said both Mulligan's and the Pro Shop are making money. The maintenance crew is the sole reason for the financial difficulties. Between both the restaurant and the Pro Shop, there would be 40 to 50 employees, local citizens, that would be without a job. The majority of the maintenance crew are city employees, so the maintenance is sourced out. The financial problem would be gone. According to sources, all the city employees would be moved to another job and therefore would not lose their job. I don't know if this is all correct or not. And then, Mark, I noticed that you were kind of shaking your head. Did you have a clarification to make because of a statement that was made by the SEIU person? No, you don't want to do that? Okay.
Chair People and Commissioner Masson, I was shaking my head at one of the comments that was made around the management fee and A and B being the same amount of money. I guess I was showing an element of frustration because I can see it in the numbers where it clearly shows the differences. So I was maybe we could have made it a little bit more clear in our presentation as to the reasons for those differences. So I was a little bit disappointed in myself.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. No, you're chair. You have to wait. Ms. Clark?
I've seen almost everybody in this room cringe every time the word profit is mentioned, and it feels like people think that this is profit versus community, but it's not really about that. It's not profit for profit's sake. It's profit for the community's sake. If the golf course isn't fiscally responsible, there will be no golf course left, and the whole community will lose. So as much as I would like to see Mulligan stay, I think we need to go with the most fiscally responsible solution for the golf course woes, and in my mind, that would be option A.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Craig.
I have a kind of a simple statement that on May 10th, the City Council directed staff to, I quote, pursue contracting for golf course maintenance services following living wage requirements. 3 months later, we are here. With the only financial disability coming from course maintenance, I find it hard to throw out the whole system when it appears we only need a minor fix. Over the last 3 calendar years, Mulligan's has paid an average annual rent of $135,000, and the Pro Shop has paid $184,000. The recommendation from the Options Committee, of which I was a part, option A, guaranteeing the city $368,000, but offers no guarantees to the workers of the 2 establishments. Option C guarantees $318,000. Option T guaranteed that these supporters of the muni would not be affected. As reflected in the minutes of the Options Committee on June 3rd, the 4 other members voted to, and I quote, refine the focus of the discussion to the management contract options A and B by rejecting option C. I dissented. Wasn't option C what we were directed to pursue? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Mr. Heaton.
Thank you. Obviously there's a lot to mull over and understand in looking at the studies, and I appreciate everyone coming out here with their support for the business. I tried to really understand the numbers maybe a little too well to follow what was going on, and looking at it from a business perspective of the overall golf course, and what's the best option profit wise, and some of the other terms were here, synergy wise for the course, but I also kept returning to the question of what we're here to study. What is the goal of what we're doing, and is it the muni overhaul, or is it to improve the economic situation and make a more sustainable golf course? And that's, and I even went back and watched the city council meeting and deliberations, and that's what they were looking for in that discussion, is to ensure that it remains self-sustaining and that the city controls policy and maintenance quality and fees. Their direction was to pursue a golf course maintenance service agreement with living wage requirements. That's what they were asking to come back with. So I, based on the information provided, I think option C actually, meets the goals of what the city council was looking for. It meets the goals of what the community is looking for. Is this, in making the course, the enterprise more sustainable and solving the problems. There were other actions that were taken also in refinancing and improving marketing that together, should make it a more viable business. Maybe not the most profitable one, but what I, and if we were a total private, golf course, that, maybe looking at it a little bit different. But really, I think what we're trying to do is solve the problem and create financial sustainability. So I think the projections and trends provide some good information, but not enough for me to recommend an overhaul of the structure that's working. We have already committed to outsourcing the maintenance, and that's projected to ensure the course continues without the support of the general fund. We don't need a long-term maintenance commitment. I think it's something that could be pursued, and if for some reason the course isn't doing as well as projected with the maintenance agreement, or not following other national trends, other than maybe doing better than them, we could come back to it and we could revisit this, and that would be perhaps the best way to go forward. So, option C, I believe, is really the best solution, and looking at options A and B, some of the information provided, saying that it really doesn't make a difference too much for those that do the management. Why wouldn't we do option B then in that case? But I don't think we even need to go there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair Nemeth.
Oh boy. When I joined the Golf Advisory Committee, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, it was my intention to make things better. I felt, and I always feel this way, I'm not allowed to complain if I'm not willing to do something about it. So I joined the Golf Advisory Committee and became the chair. And when we talk about what we're talking about today, I think it's really a great thing that the community is out here. A lot of the people in this room I've played golf with, I've had dinner with. I've had breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the same day at Mulligan's. I work with one of the daughters, and a lot of the other people in this room I've played with, and I'm here representing you. I appreciate what Bryant said about the Creeks project and what transpired throughout that process. I think that was part of the reason I joined the GAC. We've been fighting this fiscal problem for a number of years now. At 60,000 rounds, we're not sustaining. We can't continue doing this. The report shows we probably have about 18 months to go before we're out. And any business or any personal finance analysis, if you're bleeding money, you're going to raise revenues or you're going to decrease costs. What we're talking about here with the maintenance thing, that's the obvious thing, is to decrease costs. I don't know that raising revenue is the right idea. At 60,000 rounds, you can pretty much call and get a tee time pretty much at a decent time. At 90,000 rounds, I got turned away a lot. And very selfishly, I'm very annoyed with this idea or this concept of trying to raise rounds. And again, that's very selfish, but from a golfer's perspective, I think you can appreciate, that point. I don't think we want 90,000 rounds being played at Muni for maintenance reasons and things like that. When we got into this discussion, the fiscal thing was probably the primary driver of the discussion and where we were trying to go. When I look at option C, and I see we're leaving $300,000 on the table by picking that option over the course of a contract of 5 years. That's a lot of money when we're trying to raise a few $1,000s here and there over the course of time. So I was very, very against option C for that particular reason, people aside. I've been leaning toward option A because it does give us that control and it gives us, that benefit, that extra $50,000 per year to address the concerns of the financial part. But additionally, $300,000 a year reinvested into this golf course for sure will make this municipal golf course one of the best in California, if not the best, over the next decade. We can't overlook that. Again, selfishly, I want the best Muni in my backyard, and I think that $300,000 will do it. I'm kind of wavering between A and B right now because of what I'm hearing and what I've read in the emails regarding Mulligan's and the service that they provide to the community. So right now, I haven't decided between A and B. I think, A provides us the opportunity to get to B. B guarantees it, but it kind of maybe limits the number of people that would bid on the contract. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. This is a really, really tough one, and I think Commissioner Clark had a really good point, and I apologize because I didn't write it down, but it was about community and fiscal policy, and the two, we've all looked at a staff report that says that our reserves at Muni could be depleted within 12 to 18 months. And that's not a good thing. And we've basically, the direction from City Council is the sustainability of Muni. There are no general funds for municipal golf course. So the choices become much more limited for the golf course. I think, going through being a member of the, whatever it was, Golf Operating Options Committee, there were three goals. One, obviously, is the direction from City Council, sustainability. So the ability to continue to operate independently. Another goal is definitely city control over policies and fees and keeping it a public course. And the third is an excellent full-service experience for both golfers and visitors. And I acknowledge the restaurant has done a fantastic job in becoming a destination restaurant. Really, really great job. But, whoever goes there from check-in to, if they're a golfer, from practice to play to dining and drinking, you want it to be just a really great experience. I thought Ms. Longstreet made a really good comment. This is public property, and there is a need for a fair playing field. Everyone here knows that in 2016, on June 30th, the contracts were going to expire. There were no more options or anything. So this is not new news, and this is not necessarily, rejecting either the pro shop staff or the restaurant as it operates now, but more about this is a contract, and it should be a fair playing field and a competitive process to get the best product that we can get at our municipal golf course and make sure that it is sustainable for the long term. And I would hope that if City Council goes with option A, that there'll be opportunities for the people in this room that have worked so hard at the golf course to build their businesses to have an opportunity to be part of that. But I've got to be in favor of option A. I'm looking at all the information we have. It's the strongest potential to increase financial performance. If you look at the projected revenues, they're significantly higher than option C. And as I think you said, other chair, that's a significant amount of money over a 5-year contract when you're looking at projected 368 versus 318. So that money builds up, and it gives us a chance to rebuild our reserves and be more competitive. I think I agree that option A offers the most benefits to the community and the fairest way to go forward. So that's where I stand. Does anyone else have any other comments? Okay, I think what we're going to do, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Chair Namnath, and he's going to take he's going to run the meeting for the GAC, and then you can turn it back over to me, and I'll do the commission.
Okay. So the members of the GAC, we're here to give our recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission. So I would entertain any motions from any of the GAC members.
Should we take a vote? Need a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept option A.
I'll second that motion. Want to go for a vote? All in favor?
No.
Okay, do we have a second motion?
I make a motion that we recommend C.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think that's all the votes, right?
Yep, that's 2-2, either way you look at it. So no recommendation put forward, I guess. Is it? Yeah.
Chair Namnath, I think you would try for another motion if you can get your committee to come to agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp. I I would like to make a motion to take the middle ground and make a motion to adopt option B and retain Mulligan's as concessionaire for the food and beverage and extend their contract and provide that to the city council. Any seconds there?
Discussion?
So you didn't get a second? Any other motions?
Any other motions, discussion?
Discussion, could we table this till after the Parks and Recreation has their vote?
You can make that motion, Joan.
I make a motion that the GAC table their vote until after the Parks and Recreation Commission has voted.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yeah, I think everyone voted in favor of that. Is that correct for the record? Okay. Okay, so we're back to the Parks and Recreation Commission now, and I would certainly entertain a motion. Mr. Rincon?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend option A to the city council.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so the motion carries. Commissioner Heaton opposed. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. And it's back to Chair Namnath.
Okay, given that that's been decided, I'll entertain a motion from GAC.
Once again, I move or make a motion to adopt option A to City Council.
And I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Okay. On the motion to adopt option A and forward that to City Council, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, at this time, option A did not pass. Are there any other motions?
If I have to, I'll recommend option C again, if we're going there. I mean, I thought the gist of it was that since the Parks and Recreation has okayed it a 4-1 vote, and if we ended up being split, that the recommendation to council would be to recommend option A.
So, chairs and committee and commission members, it was always our intent to take two separate recommendations forward. I think council is interested in the perspective of the Golf Advisory Committee. I think that if you are at a 2-2 on your various options and there's no movement either way, we can report that. But it would be better if you could come to an agreement, but if you can't, you can't. And so that's where we are.
members of the GAC, I would urge us to try to come up with some sort of a solution, even if it's a partial solution, as opposed to leaving it open-ended the way it currently is. So I would like to put a motion forward to adopt option B once again, so that we can retain mulligans, or at least put that forward to City Council. Is there a second?
I can't talk, can I? Have to wait.
Just to remind the GAC members, you can second a motion just to have the opportunity to have the deliberation and discussion. It's really the vote that
I'll
counts.
second it.
Want to open that up for discussion?
If I'll say again, if there was some way that we could maintain mulligans, and I mean, it's a 5-year contract, is that correct?
The term of the contract would be decided by the city as we were going forward. So if it were a management agreement, we understand a typical contract is 3 to 5 years. So we haven't determined what that term would be if, in fact, we were going to have a management agreement. If we were going to do a separate restaurant concession, and it's the restaurant which currently is in place with a good history of working with the city, then the term could be longer. So I'm not exactly sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's difficult for me since it was the city council that negotiated the unsustainable contract with the SEIU to begin with. And here we are, and we're going back there again. I don't know. I'll leave it up to somebody else to discuss this. John?
Yeah, I'd like to make just a comment, since 2 of our GAC members have been excluded due to conflict of interest because they're marshals, and knowing that they would support C, I would urge the other members of the GAC, maybe in the kindness of their hearts, to lean our way.
I actually, Chair Namnath, I believe that comment should probably be stricken. The 2 members recused themselves because of the conflict of interest. I don't think another member can speak for them, and very intentionally, they were not part of the discussion because they have a connection. So I'm a little uncomfortable with bringing them in and speaking for them when they're not a part of this discussion. I would not want your action to be overturned later by the city attorney.
So is there any further discussion? I would like to, add to the motion that we strongly recommend to City Council under option B that the current concessionaire mulligans is considered basically the incumbent.
I agree.
So with that amended portion of the motion, all in favor?
I would agree. I think we're probably at an impasse, and I think what we have. So we'll go with that.
Okay, so with no further business, the meeting is adjourned, and thank you all very much for coming.